Hello. Hey, just 1 past 2. Let's start our webinar today on how to navigate through the digital IT implementation jungle. A very fancy marketing title, but let's dive right in. What is on the agenda for today? We have a short introduction of Solventure and myself. A software selection and software implementation is really an adventure through the jungle, but I will give you an insight on my perspective on what it takes to do a good selection and a good implementation. I have an observation with regards to the gap between business and IT. It's a very classic gap, but still it is very present within organizations still today. I've distilled for myself 6 lessons learned, and the lessons learned or the observations are focused on losing less time on selection and implementation of IT solutions and especially supply chain planning solutions. At the end, we will talk about your input. We want your input into this, and there will be time and there will be a tool, an online tool for you to interact with us, to give your insight, so that we also get a feel of, okay, what is of importance to you, so that we can take that as input also for our lessons learned and how we can better service our customers and the marketplace. At the end, we have some time for questions and answers, so don't hesitate to raise your questions when they would come up. Okay, let's start with the short introduction of Solventure. What is Solventure about? Well, Solventure is about turning your supply chain into a competitive edge. So Solventure really is focusing on the needs of supply chain and especially supply chain planning. Now, how do we do that? Well, we do that through the concept of the supply chain triangle, and the supply chain triangle consists out of service, cost, and cash. And searching the optimal balance in the supply chain triangle is aimed at maximizing the return on capital employed, or ROCE, which is an important metric for an organization, and to our belief, a metric which really covers all the 3 corners of that triangle. So in order to find that balance in the supply chain triangle, we utilize and implement with our customers strategy-driven S&OP. So strategy-driven S&OP can consist out of the strategic benchmarking, really benchmarking and target setting with regards to these financial metrics like ROCE or EBITDA, or what are the growth targets for the next few years compared to your competitors. Also segmentation, product management, demand planning, more classic domain, inventory optimization, supply planning, and executive S&OP. Now, in addition to that, I already talked about strategic benchmarking, which is really a differentiating offering. I hope you have already read some of the white papers of my colleague Sven, or read the book on the supply chain triangle from my colleague Bram de Smet. S&OP software, we are the implementation partner for Europe of the Arkieva S&OP software suite. So that's the software which we utilize to realize these benefits when it comes to S&OP planning, S&OP software. We invested lately, the past few years, heavily in a data connector, the data connector which is focused on integration, which will come back later today in the presentation. S&OP Academy, all about trainings and creating awareness within your organization when it comes to supply chain and S&OP. We have some advanced analytics, we have leading indicator forecasting, and we continue our long-standing tradition in researching multi-echelon inventory optimization. And we always do that, and that's also my firm belief, we do that in a holistic approach, people, process, analytics, and tools. It's not only about software. If you don't have the right people in place with the right skill set, and you have a well thought through process to organize that within your organization, it won't work. So you need a holistic approach when driving when searching improvement in supply chain and especially supply chain planning. Now, something more about me, not too boring. I've selected one of my private vacation photos. Well, I am the father of 3. You see there are my 3 kids. And second big thing is I'm really passionate about supply chain, so I'm also very happy today to talk about supply chain and especially about supply chain implementation, what it takes to implement supply chain planning within an organization. Well, if it comes to selecting S&OP software or selecting any software within an organization to improve or to grow the maturity of a business process, it's very clear that there are multiple stakeholders that are part of that selection process. And when you have multiple stakeholders, it's clear that you have multiple or different wishes and needs from each of these different departments of the organization that are involved. And it's really important that you come to a common understanding and a consensus about what are the needs, what are the stakes, what are the priorities of these different stakeholders. And it's just like the picture demonstrates. You need to find a consensus what TV program you will be watching this evening together with your girlfriend or wife. Well, that's the same thing when it comes to selecting software or implementing software. You have different stakeholders and you need to find a consensus in order to be able to move forward, don't have conflicts, and don't lose any time. You want to make the best out of your time that you have available. Now, very clear is there is still a gap today between the classic business department and the IT department. Maybe it's a cliche, what I'm talking about now, business versus IT, but hey, I still perceive it very, very regularly within multiple organizations that finding alignment between business and IT does not come easy. It's not a given. You need to really take the time and take the time and take efforts and actions in order to get that. Well, why is a gap between business and IT and losing time on a selection process? Why is that hurtful? Well, there is no greater harm than that of time wasted. Something I often think about is the business is made today. The market conditions are there today. We are selling goods today. Well, there is no time to waste. The organization needs to respond to these market conditions, and it needs to respond today. It does not need to respond in 2 years from now when we have gone through an extensive process definition and an extensive selection of a software tool. Losing 2 years, okay, that's just 2 years lost. It's a huge cost for the organization to not have the ability to react in a better, improved way of working today than in 2 years from now. So we're all fighting against time, so we need to ensure that we don't lose too much time. And having a better understanding of the IT needs allows us to not lose too much time. And this is not where you want to end up. If it's about business versus IT, you don't want to get into conflicts because you don't understand each of the needs well enough, or your respective needs or the needs of the IT department. No, you need to have a common understanding. Otherwise, you get into conflict. And how are decisions made when you're into a conflict? Well, it's about power. What is the most powerful party wins in the end, and that does not lead to the best decision, and it also does not lead to a common decision. It's a common supported decision is not typically the outcome of a conflict. So preventing conflict is very, very important. And that brings me to my 6 learnings, call them learnings or observations, when it comes to having a better understanding of the IT vision and the needs. Well, it's about having the best choice, a short implementation, and a short selection of a software tool. And we will walk you through each of these 6 observations I have. And at the end, I will ask your opinion. I will ask you to actually do a scoring of which of these 6 elements do you find that require more attention than they are getting today within your own organization. So I'm very interested to see the outcome of that, to prioritize different improvements, or where we also want to focus on together with our customers to create a better understanding of the IT vision and needs. Let's dive into the first one. The first one is about the IT vision and the enterprise architecture. And I selected here a very visual image that visualizes something for me that fairly well compares to enterprise architecture or the landscape, an IT landscape of an organization. And the image is about urban planning. And urban planning is all about how do you think up front, how the landscape, how the community will look like, what area will be used for leisure or for sports activities, what area is for the business district, what area is more residential in nature, and how do you create the right mix in that. So thinking through what will happen where is important for urban planning, but is also equally important for an organization's IT landscape. And then typically, or very commonly, the word enterprise architecture is used to have that perspective, that holistic perspective, to look into the IT landscape and then plan upfront, have a vision on that. Well, giving that some more body, one of the possible architectures that you could find a few years back was more a point-to-point architecture, a landscape of different applications that all talk with one another. Typically, you get into a landscape which is like a spaghetti. You have a spaghetti of different tools which each talk to each other, and there is little amount of coordination and oversight. So that's definitely not something that we want, and it's definitely not a landscape which is very sustainable for future evolution. Now, in addition to that, what you see here is that there are multiple applications on this example. And multiple applications means like we have moved away from one monolithic system that covers it all. It does not exist anymore within organizations today. One big ERP system that covers all of the needs for the whole organization. No, we really moved away from that. And you should look at your own smartphone. If you have a smartphone, it's not one app that does it all for your smartphone. It's the same thing for your organization. It's not one application that does it all for your organization. No, you have an ecosystem of different applications, and they need to talk to each other. If they talk to each other, you better don't create a spaghetti diagram like this. It's on this picture. But what is then the alternative if you have it about an IT landscape? What is then the alternative to a spaghetti diagram? Well, it's more like a hub and spoke architecture, and I have selected a few visuals about a hub and spoke architecture, where you have all these applications. You still have that ecosystem of applications, but in the middle you have like a spider that is in the middle of the web. Well, and that's that integration hub, or the integration coordination between all of these applications. At the left, you see the visual of, okay, you see there already an indication of, okay, this area is supporting the sales operations. There is an area for EDI, communication with customers and with suppliers. There is an area for inventory management. There is an area for purchase order system. So that means that when you visualize things on the IT landscape, also visualize what system is supporting which business function or business process. Now, again, making it a bit more specific. And here I'm taking a functional perspective rather than a technical perspective. And if you take a functional perspective on things, then it's clear that you have in a common landscape, you have an ERP entity. You have possibly a system or an area where you have BI tools, BW tools. You have an area where you have MES tools, manufacturing execution systems, and you have an area with maybe warehouse management systems. Now, if you consider the IT landscape, there is also a possible landscape where you combine an ERP with what is called an APS, or abbreviated with APS, or advanced planning system. Now, I already shared at the beginning that for implementing S&OP and enabling that process, we use Arkieva, the Arkieva software, to support that. Well, Arkieva is actually one of these APS systems out on the market, an advanced planning system, which is a best of breed, as they call it, system, which can actually quite easily hook on to an ERP system, which is more the transactional book of record that connects everything together. Now, the planning can be done either in an ERP system. You have also a module within the ERP system that supports planning, and typically they're not necessarily the most advanced solutions. Sometimes we run into limitations into the planning module of ERP systems, which are better covered by best of breed solutions, best of breed APS solutions. So think about a landscape ERP plus APS, and then think about what will I do in an APS, what will I do in the ERP. ERP very, very good in transactional work, transactions, creating a sales order, converting a sales order to a shipping document, making a delivery note, converting a sales order into an invoice, all these transactional operations. It's the cup of tea of a very good ERP system like SAP or Microsoft Dynamics. But when you then go into planning, you really have a choice to do it either within the module of the ERP or within an advanced planning solution or an APS solution. That was the first topic. Think about the IT vision and the enterprise architecture. When we step into the second observation or lesson learned, we are into the area of implementation methodology. Now, when it comes to implementation methodology, think about what is my project approach, what is my project management approach, but also important is to consider what are the complexities of my organization. And organizations are typically definitely not small organizations which are only covering a few sites. No, we are talking about enterprises which cover different countries, which cover different global regions, multiple entities, maybe multiple business units. So really think about what can happen centrally, from a central perspective, if it's about the central supply chain planning group. What will happen more on a regional basis? What modules or solutions should we implement on a regional basis? And what is better done on a local basis, implementing it local site per site? And if you have done that exercise of what is a central process, group process, what is regional, what is local, if you have done that exercise, also think about, shall I work with a template and a rollout methodology, or how will I define my methodology? Okay, giving it some more body to that. Well, let's first consider implementing a solution for a single module, so a single topic, a single process, and a single entity, meaning it's just one region, one business unit where we want to implement. Well, then common phases are define a blueprint, have the different workshops to assess the as is and where you want to go with the to be situation, and come to a definition of what are the requirements that are linked to that. And requirements are both functional but also technical, and data requirements, that's all in there, should be covered by a blueprint. A blueprint you should drive towards a sign-off. Once the sign-off is done, ask a base model, and we also provide customers a base model. And why do we give it the name base model? You could also call it minimum viable product, it's a different name, MVP. But the base model actually gives a very quickly, it gives a very good insight into the basic structures of the model. And it already, if you can bring that in front of the users, they can quickly relate to what we're actually setting up as model and as process. And then we go into the third phase, which is all about refinements and iterations. It can be weekly iterations or bi-weekly iterations, where we go through the configuration together with the core project team to refine the solution. And why do we do that? Well, we want to not wait too long with getting the feedback from the core project team in refining it. So it's really about getting feedback, but also training people along the way. And then you get into the more formal phase of training a broader community, not only the core project team, but a broader community, and then deploying it to other to the end users. And then we go into the go live, which is a very important milestone, and then you need to support the go live through the hypercare phase. Now, what is important for us is why do we do those refinements and these iterations? And then that methodology is really built around that concept. Well, it's really about the right visual. It's about creating incremental value. Incremental value means you see the value being generated very quickly, one step after another. You see already value being generated while costs actually kind of linearly typically increase, and the service cost or the implementation cost that increases. But there is a match between the value you see and the cost. You don't have the left side where you have all of the efforts being done, and then only at the end you get into a big bang at the end, where only then the value gets generated. So it's about getting fast ROI, tackle the risks as soon as relevant. By having these iterations, you see the risks coming up and you can adjust and steer your approach. Realize the highest value functionality first, and you're able to adapt and then gracefully adopt the process and the solution that is being put forward. Now, that's for one single entity, that example. When I get into more about global organizations where you need to implement something for one entity and then you need to roll it out to multiple entities. Well, first come to defining a template. And here we visualize what are the different steps in coming up with a template, and then get into rolling out that template to different regions, different business units, or different, let's call it, entities. And these are some steps which are important. I will not go through each of the kind of detailed steps. I just wanted to give you a flavor of, okay, global organizations, think about project methodology. What about a template? What should be in a template? How do we get to a template? How do we involve everyone in the template definition? And how do we then roll it out to different other entities? This slide also gives you a flavor of, okay, which team do we need then? What is the definition of each of the teams that is involved? And how do you organize these different teams? And so we have clearly in these bigger projects, you need a steerco, a very formal steerco, well thought through, well structured steerco with a well structured agenda and frequency, a blueprint team and a template team, an IT team, possibly also a competence center, and then a core team that is a core project team, which is probably doing the rollouts. Well, that was lesson learned number 2, or the second observation. Let's get into the third one. Stay with me. The third one is about budget authority and budget owner. So if you look to organizations, and we talked about the gap between IT and business, well, who is now responsible for the implementation budget? Is it the business side or is it the IT side? There are probably arguments for both. The business side is in the end the consumer or the user of the business process. You do it for the business to implement it. So maybe they should be accountable for the costs of that implementation. But at the other side, it's about implementing a software solution. So you could state like, yeah, it's software. So it's the IT department which is responsible for costs and budgets when it comes to the implementation of software. So it's very tricky, and there are different opinions. It's one or it's the other. The observation I have is it needs to be a common responsibility. It needs to be common between the IT department and the business department. Both are accountable for the budget. Both should worry about the budget. If you go to sleep, it cannot be that one is kind of worrying and thinking about the budget and what is kind of generated as value, and the other is only thinking about value and about his needs and his wishes. No, if you only think about your wishes, I can use the metaphor, if you give your MasterCard to your kids, they will have a great time, they will buy everything they like, but hey, you will get the bill. Don't want to get the bill and not have any impact on the choices that are being made. So really ensure that the wishes and the cost implications, that those are shared between both departments. For me, it's an important element to think through when you're setting up your project and your initiative. Fourth, for me, lessons learned and observation is about data protection. Data protection, I see I have some shifting things on my slide, but okay, I will walk you through it. Data protection in this area, it's of increasing importance. And why do I see the importance really increasing? Well, we see a tendency of going towards more cloud applications. And if it's about cloud applications, then it's no longer on the own IT infrastructure that all the data is residing, and it's no longer in the direct own control of the IT organization. So if you go to the cloud and you leverage these great cloud solutions, then there is a change in things, in aspects about data protection and IT security. You need to think about, okay, what about data encryption? If it's in the cloud and I'm utilizing it within my company network, how is the communication encrypted? Can it not be, can nobody kind of decrypt that communication and then actually get their hands on our data? What about user authentication? If it's in the cloud, if you have a cloud application, typically give the following example when it comes to authentication. If you fire someone today, if you let go of someone today, you don't want to have a delay of 3-4 days between the point of you letting the person go and when that person has no longer authentication to a certain cloud application. No, you should be able to control that from a central perspective. If a person is let go, you should be able to deactivate that person on your own network, in your own Active Directory, and then it should also be impacting all these cloud applications immediately. The next one is user authorization. Authorization is still something different. It's about once you're inside an application, what are you authorized to do? Are you authorized to view certain data? And are you authorized to change certain data? So what are your authorizations within the application, within the business process? And the fourth one is disaster recovery and backup. Cloud applications are great, but also you need to then control and get a good insight in how secure is your data. How secure are we against if a data center is getting in difficulties? Do we still have an ability to have to get back online and have no loss of data? What is the policies around backups? It's very important to think that through upfront, definitely with the evolution towards towards cloud applications. And if you, as a business, you ask for cloud applications and you see a lot of benefits of that, okay, it's great, but give the IT department also some slack that they might be worried about some of the aspects, and these aspects need to be factored into your selection process and into your implementation process. Well, aspect number 4 is about integration. And I had a phone call with someone this morning, and it was the supply chain director of an organization, and she said to me, like, yeah, Nick, the project is on the budget for next year. Let's stay in contact. But I hear our IT department constantly fighting integrations. Integrations are giving a lot of headaches to that organization, and that we have realized several years back, that integration is really something that people worry about. And definitely the IT organization, if you see that ecosystem of applications, okay, you need to connect that all together in an efficient way, in a structured way, in a way that can be controlled, and in a very quick way, because you don't have ample IT resources. A lot of organizations have not sufficient IT resources. Well, what have we done on that aspect of integration? Well, we have come up with what we called templated integrations, where we actually define for different source systems, can be ERP systems or CRM systems, we have defined the different templates, because we have done that several times. We have done that at multiple customers. So we have built up these templates, and we leverage these templates project after project. So that speeds up the integration, the time for integration a lot. Another aspect, you see 2 other aspects on the slide. It's about ERP terminology. If the vendor or the tool you select has a structured integration approach with either templates or a connector, however they call it, typically what you find if they have an integration template for your ERP system is that the company behind or the vendor behind is able to talk your ERP terminology. I call it lingo, and often it's SAP lingo. So it's very important in a project that there is a common understanding of what are the base structures, objects within your ERP system. So your vendor should be able to talk about MARA and MARC when your system or when your ERP backbone is an SAP system. The third element is about enterprise integration platform. Well, enterprise integration platform, we have seen that hub and spoke architecture. Well, your integration should hook on to that into that spider of the web, into that centerpiece, that hub, that integration hub. Well, okay, that's that integration platform. How is your integration approach in your project connected to that integration platform? I have also some slides which give some more meat to the bone. Well, when it's about integration, typically you see a layered integration architecture where the first layer at the bottom of the overview is the layer of data provider and data consumer. In this example, for example, we have SAP ECC and SAP APO as data providers. Well, they provide transactional data, master data, in this example also a demand plan, which are exposed or unlocked towards the integration layer. Typically it's a data bus, it can be a SQL database, where certain elements happen. You see there are data quality checks, business transformations, cleansing, consistency, augmentation, or integration of multiple sources. What we, for example, encounter regularly is that an organization has an ambition to go towards one ERP system, but that currently they have still 2 SAP instances. And having 2 SAP instances creates the need for consolidation, because you cannot have 2, it's typically one supply chain, which is managed through two distinct ERP systems, but it's one supply chain. You need to optimize. So, okay, that data needs to be brought together and be connected. Well, that's an exercise of consolidation, which can happen in that data bus. And then the layer on top is the supply chain planning layer. You see there also Arkieva. Arkieva was also supported behind the backbone is a SQL database. And there it's the layer of where you have all these different supply chain planning modules, models, and where the process really is modeled and supported. And well, at the left side, you see the connector. It's how we approach it. You have different components to support these different layered integration architecture. You have adapters to connect to the sources. You have SSIS, which is the integration technology of SQL Server. You define the metadata, and you have these templates which you can leverage to expose or move that data between those different source systems and target systems. I talked about data integration, but you also have what is being called application integration. And what do we mean with application integration? Well, it's at a different layer. It's no longer just moving data between different systems. It's about connecting different systems on a business logic level. So an example for that could be you create a sales order in one system. Well, you expect that that sales order is being shared with a different system where the sales order is either converted to something else or enriched or triggers a different action in the business process. And that's more talking about if that happens, then this will happen in a different application. Well, that is really talking about application integration. So if it's about integration, if you hear your IT department talking about, okay, what is, we have difficulties with integration, maybe you can ask, okay, what type of integration are you talking about? Are you talking about really data integration, or are you talking about application integration? It's two different things at different levels. Well, I already shared that, okay, we invested in a connector. And I'll give you this example from our Arkieva data connector. Well, at the left side, we see internal data sources and external data sources. Internal data sources might be ERP systems, data warehouses like BI tools, BW tools, like CRM tools. Those can reside either in the cloud or on-premise. And then you have these external data sources. You have your customers, can be a data source to get structured information from your customers towards your organization and your systems. Suppliers can provide you insights and data. Logistics service providers, Internet of Things tools that are collecting data, but also big data platforms in the cloud. So on-premise, in the cloud, all of these sources can be in either or one of both. Well, and the Arkieva data connector has these standard adapters for different source systems to then unlock that data and to load it into Arkieva. What are functionalities of that Arkieva data connector? Well, it's about monitoring the integrations and alerting if something is not in line or out of the ordinary. It's scheduling certain integrations. It's the configuration of it during the implementation and deploying the configuration or the configured data integration packages. The transformation of data can happen there, and now also the data quality can be assessed and managed within that Arkieva data connector. Also, the data connector can reside in the cloud or on-premise, depending upon also where you leverage the Arkieva application, either on-premise or in the cloud. So this gives you an insight in, okay, what do vendors do in order to support you in your integration headaches? And if you select a tool, we'll ask, okay, do you have a connector? What is your connector about? Is it templated? Yes or no? Do you have an adapter for my ERP system? These are very good questions to ask during the selection and when you're planning the implementation. Well, if it's about available adapters, we have selected a few of them here on the slide. We have adapters for SAP, we have adapters for SAP HANA, we have SAP BW connectors or adapters. We connect to Azure, SQL, Azure in the cloud, and OData is one of the integration protocols that we support. Microsoft Dynamics, the different versions. You have the classic one, the Navision version, but also the 365. The 365 is actively gaining traction. More and more organizations are leveraging Microsoft Dynamics 365 in the cloud. So very important, very new. Not a lot of vendors are able to support that in an effective way and have built up the experiences with 365. And Salesforce, one of the very common CRM systems, can be integrated with, and then also Oracle and Oracle GD AdWords systems are systems that where we have adapters. And so adapters means that it's standard technology within your ERP system that is being leveraged to integrate with that ERP system. So it reduces the time that is needed for that, but also the risk because you use standard technology from these ERP systems. The fifth lessons learned, because integration is a big thing, the fifth one is about reporting and dashboarding. And I especially want to talk here about the dashboarding component of it. And the discussion I see coming back a few times now is the discussion about should you have your dashboards within the application or should you have your dashboards outside of the application. And outside of the application, then you typically go towards the champions when it comes to visualization. You have ClickView, you have Power BI, and definitely Tableau is kind of one of the leaders when it comes to rich and the best visualization tools out there. Well, for me, the discussion about within the application and outside the application is a non-discussion. It's a non-topic. Why? Well, it's very simple. If people are so used to having visual insights and visual analytics today, people have built up that experience. They see it on their smartphone. Everything is visual. They don't see just the numbers. They see the analytics. They see the graphs, visualizations in different flavors. Well, that is the base need. The user wants to see visual information. He does not want to see just numbers. If the user has that basic need of visual representation, well, then it's simple. You need within the application visual representation of the data, and you need it also outside of the application. So what does that mean from an IT landscape? Well, if I would be a CIO, I would select a visualization tool across the company. For example, I would select either Tableau or Power BI, and all of the company-wide dashboards that should be built there and should be exposed there, so that all the sales reports, supply chain reports, finance reports that should be used and leveraged across the whole organization should be leveraged there and there and there, or the common company-wide visualization tool. And if it comes about within the application, well, there it's supporting that business process. If the supply chain planner and the supply chain director are managing the supply chain, it also needs to be visualized. So you also need to have capabilities there to have visual representation of data. So it's not an or it's an and question. I've taken an example this morning. What is a visualization about? Well, if it's about supply chain visualization, this is a real life example in forecast accuracies. You see here a volume analysis at the left side and a mix analysis of the forecast accuracy at the right side. You see different insights. Well, and this is not static. It's a dynamic dashboard, dynamic visual representation of that information. So you can select one of the customers and then get to the details of which which products does that customer buy from us, and how is then the performance distributed across these products, and so forth. You can start from the high-level dashboard, get the insights, get the analytics, and then dive and drill in deeper to where you see that there is a gap or a discrepancy of where you want to be. And the sixth one, and then we go into a more interactive part of today's webinar with the online poll. The sixth one is a level of self-service, I've called. So you have probably already been at the buffet where you take your own plate, you have different spoons, and you take whatever you want, and you do it yourself. You are in control of how much you want of what and how you do that. But if that self-service, we actually see that tendency also coming up when it's about implementation. When it's about implementation, and I go to customers, I see people with a certain skill set that is way beyond of the skill set that was there a few years back. If we look to a supply chain analyst, a supply chain planner today, it's not uncommon that we see people with database skills, with very advanced analytical skills, that can manipulate queries, that can do very advanced pivot operations. Well, if you have these more technical, advanced technical skills readily available also with that supply chain planner, then actually that person can do a whole lot also when it comes to the implementation. So a tendency is that people want to take up a certain part of the implementation themselves. They want to be almost self-serving, self-sufficient in doing the implementation. And the role of the vendor would then change towards more coaching and training the users and the organization on how they can implement themselves rather than an external vendor coming in and doing the implementation. So it's also there, if it's about getting alignment between business and IT, talk about, okay, to what degree do we want to do certain services ourselves rather than having the vendor do it? And it will impact what vendor you select and also what tool you select. Certain tools are easier to configure yourself as an organization than others. And it's also about what skills and techniques are needed for that. Okay, that was the sixth one. Let's get into something more dynamic. So I hope you're still awake all by now, because we will need some of your help. So the question which we will answer today is, in your organization, which of the 6 elements that we discussed today require more attention as they get today? So which elements of the 6 require more attention than they get today? Well, what shall we do? Well, we go to a website. It's very simple. It's menti.com. You see here, it's in, oh, that was not what I wanted to do. You see in the top right corner, menti.com. You see there the abbreviation. So go to that website. You get into a landing page, and it will ask you for a certain code. And the code is 779129. So go to the website and use the code 779129. There you will be able to score each of the 6 elements. You see there the 6 elements also listed on my slide. Well, if you see the 6 elements, divide your points, your bucket of 100 points to each of the elements. So the element which you find the most important, that should get more attention today than it's getting already, give that the biggest amount of your 100 points. The one that you state like it's not relevant, we should stop worrying about it, or we should not discuss as much about it, give it the least amount of your points. So, okay, menti.com, and then use the code 779129. Okay, and now I will do some technical work on my end, and I will take the results of our scoring. I see some people are answering the questions. Well, what do we see is that currently we have 27% is going towards integration, 24% it's about IT vision and enterprise architecture. We have level of self-service as third one, which is higher up than I would expected, and also what we have seen in previous votings. We have reporting and dashboarding, Then at the bottom we have implementation methodology and data protection. So there are answers coming in, so there are some people that are still scoring further. So we are leading with integration. It's at the very top. Reporting and dashboarding is the following. IT vision and enterprise architecture. Okay. Oh, we have some more, but the order does not change. So integration. Oh, we have some more. Integration is very important. So I think do ask the question about what is the data connector about, and if you select a tool and a vendor, do ask questions like what is your integration methodology. Okay, we are nearing 3 o'clock, so we are about to wrap up today. We have a few minutes to answer some questions. At the top right, I've visualized how you can type in your questions. So if there are people that say, okay, I would like to have one of my questions answered, there is the pane at the top right where you can, you see it in the dialog box of GoToWebinar. You can enter your question and send it to us. Then we will take that question and answer it. Okay. There is one question. The question is, how can you make sure that non-IT profiles understand the difficulties of data integration and consolidation of different source systems towards one target system? Okay, so how can you make sure that non-IT profiles understand the difficulties of data integration and consolidation? Well, for me, a good way to think that through is take them along in the exercise of defining the data requirements. So you have a blueprint. You're talking about what you want to do as being a planner. The planner might be non-technical. What do you want to do with the business process? What are your functional requirements? When you're writing down the functional requirements, like I want to make a statistical forecast, I want to segment my demand planning portfolio, also think about what are the data requirements in order to support that. What should I have? If the planner expresses that, then do it together with him to translate it into technical terms. Translate it to SAP objects and potentially also technical field names within SAP. Within SAP, I have quite some experience there. You can, for example, toggle F1 and then you get to know what is the technical object behind and the field behind and the technical name. And if you get a few of these habits there, then you typically see that people don't stop at thinking, I need this or I don't see that, but that they state, okay, why don't we have this field from SAP exposed, or why is this object here or there, or why is it not complete? So that typically helps into getting into kind of that technical terminology and getting that along. Just taking a second question, to which extent do you see Agile being a workable approach in APS implementation? Well, I love that question. Thank you for that question. I think I had the big debate 4 or 5 years ago with my team about Agile, because Agile is it's quite well marketed. It's very sexy and very sexy terminology. And Agile is, for us, it's not retained as best project management methodology. We rather believe in methodologies which are like PMI, PMBOK. That's our methodology. That's our thinking framework where we start from. And why is Agile less fit for this job or for this type of APS implementations? It's, you have certain concepts in Agile which are very, very extreme. And one of these concepts I will briefly touch upon is, well, there is no budget defined at the start. So one of the very basic principles in Agile is that, okay, there should not be a budget, because you just make a list of all the needs and the requirements, and then you will select in an Agile way which of the needs that you will satisfy. Well, within APS implementations, if I get to customers, well, they don't tell me that there is no budget. No, there is always a budget limitation, and you need to think out of starting from, okay, a certain need, a functional area that needs to be covered, and budget considerations. So that's for me why Agile is quite difficult. Where we see Agile fitting very well is, for example, in pure product development, where you state, I have a team of 10 product developers. Well, I just wanted to make a good software with those 10 developers I have. Well, use an Agile methodology. You have these 10 anyways. You have these 10 developers anyways. So you have the cost. Then it's just about managing that they do the right stuff, and that they do it in an Agile way, and that they take up the biggest needs first. Well, I think an Agile methodology works pretty well there. But when it's about a vendor versus customer, and when the vendor should be implementing a software solution, I don't believe Agile is very fit for that. So that's why we also had to debate several years back, and that we said, okay, no, we in our methodology we will not put forward Agile. We will put forward a PMI, PMBOK methodology, which is about base model. Minimum viable product is also an Agile, something that comes back, and then having these iterations. That's what we believe in. That's what we actively do. Okay, I think I need to wrap up here. We are 2 before 3, so I'm today apparently very good in time management. So I have 2 more minutes to give you some more insights and some call to actions. Well, we have 2 websites, of course. We have the website of Solventure. We have the website of Arkieva. Please check us out. We are doing our utmost best to have regularly some blogs on there, and you can read some stuff. You can ask some questions. You can ask a demo of certain things. Also, Thomas would love to give demos of the data connectors, so don't hesitate to reach out to us. And the second call to action is about the Solventure Academy. And the Solventure Academy is organizing pretty in the near future on March 27th and 29th to 29th. We have a 3-day program. It's called the Accelerator Days. It's about demand planning the first day, and inventory and supply planning the second day, and the third day it's about executive S&OP. So you can either subscribe for the 3-day program or for one of the days. So it's very, very interesting to not only learn from some of the material that the Academy will put forward, but also learn from colleagues of the industry, from different industries, to learn from their experiences. It's typically very, very interactive and very, very nice, to have that interaction and to learn and to have these great discussions. Just as this webinar, I hope that on the Accelerator Days, you can gain some further ideas and inspiration in order to tackle your supply chain planning challenges in the next weeks and months and years to come. So thank you for joining me today in this webinar, and thank you for the questions. Thank you for answering the poll, and let's meet pretty soon, either at the Accelerator Days or at one of the other events or webinars that we will be organizing in the near future. Okay, thank you very much, and have a very nice day. Bye-bye.